Yes.
Well, ready?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much for coming and for joining us on this panel. My name is María José, and this is Esther, and we're going to be discussing our work. This is the panel on gender. So welcome. And I'm going to introduce you to Esther. Esther, that's right. Esther Gazzola Borges. She graduated in Portuguese and English language, literature, and linguistics at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. She got her master's in 2021 on a CAPES study scholarship. CAPES? Okay, I'm learning Portuguese now. Okay, and at the University of Sao Paulo with a dissertation on lesbian erasure and queer identity in the novel Stir Fry by Emma Donnelly. She's currently taking her PhD at the same university on a FAPESP scholarship. Her thesis focuses on queer diaspora in Irish literature. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm María José. I'm a translator, English translator, Spanish translator. I got my degree at Universidad de Córdoba, and I'm finishing my studies to become a professor at the same university. And I'm doing my master's on Universidad Nacional de Río Cuarto. It's on English language and with literature also. So let's begin.
Yes. Just a question about the slides. How do I?
Do you want me to?
Is it? I think it's just gonna be one. Only one.
No, it's a PDF.
Oh, but
So maybe.
no, it was.
It was only one.
Was it a PDF?
no.
Yes, but it's a one.
It's only one slide.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. Would you like to check it?
Do you have internet?
Oh yes, we do.
Will you be able to access it? Oh no, I must have.
But it was just that.
It only came one slide
Yeah.
instead of the whole thing. Oh no,
Let's
this is.
see.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
actually
no.
one slide.
I am so sorry.
No, it's okay. Never mind.
I should have. I thought I had.
So here we are. So
Can I go?
yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. Don't worry.
Then how is it?
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
You're so modern.
Sorry, afterwards. Yeah,
Yes, that we are.
that's heaven.
Wait.
Yeah.
Can I present a photo?
Oh yeah, that would be great. I think I'll probably do that.
Oh yeah. Just with a link, and that's it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really nice.
Oh, it's okay.
This is get things done the night before getting on flight.
It's only one slide that you
Yeah,
and it's all like
Yeah.
a infographic. I
Oh,
think,
you have to tap your phone. Yes.
Yeah.
with some pieces of information, and so something is missing. Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah, don't worry.
I'm not going to speaking.
I do. I do
she
like
will-
speaking.
she will-
I can entertain you.
Yeah, she will speak.
I will. I am dealing with an Irish a novel written by an Irish author, but I'm still learning about Irish studies. It's like not like my main. But I was just talking to Esther, and she said like, "When
Are you speaking today?
yes, I'm presenting something because I read, and it had to do something with what I study, what I research, and what my research is."
Yeah, not an option at all.
You see, it's fun.
Because it's supposed to be. No entiendo por qué
visuals?
No.
It's on the cloud.
Sí, con esto de representación, ¿no?
No, it's not me.
Claro, porque están.
I'm analogic.
Vale, no.
Me too. But she has it though, but the thing is that it wouldn't download properly, so she only has the first slide instead of like the whole presentation.
Exactly. So download one slide.
Exactly. And now we download it and we get the whole thing. I do that as well, just in case.
Yeah, I know.
And it has saved me plenty times.
The capital letters check there.
No, it says there is a problem with the email. The website is not loading anything.
That you may have downloaded.
Yeah, I think I'm like, can I send you your email?
Now you are. Now you can go. Really? Okay. Good. So I'll begin like presenting my work. Okay, I'm going to read it off, but then we can discuss it. Okay. Okay. So when table turns, gender performativity reversed in Martina Devlin's About Sisterland. That's the name of the book. The author is Martina Devlin, and the book was written in 2015. So I'll begin. Over the last few decades, the world has borne witness to an increasing number of the female-centered dystopian novels, and Irish literature is no exception to this phenomenon. Novels such as Louise O'Neill's Only Ever Yours or Sarah Mary Griffin's Fair and Home Parts delve into exciting science fiction tropes while also problematizing gender and ecological issues that are quite current. So on the one hand, they deal with science fiction and things that are quite exciting, but on the other hand, they are really touching upon topics that are very current, like gender issues and ecological. Martina Devlin's first and only book of this genre, About Sisterland, was written in 2015, and it presents a world post-World War III, right? And I'm quoting, the world lies in rubble. Everything has been destroyed. Entire ecosystems, animal and plant species have become extinct. The air is polluted and so is the water. So in this new territory that is called Sisterland, society has reconfigured itself into a regime ruled by and for women, where men have become second-class citizens and they live subdued to their female counterparts. Yes. In this presentation, I'm going to explore the tensions regarding gender and power that are laid bare by this reversal of gender performativity in Devlin's book. And I'm going to stand from an anti-essentialist position, and I will examine this reversal of the gender roles with a close-up on the relationship that male and female characters have towards nature. Okay?
Can you repeat, please?
The name of the book is called About Martina Devlin is the name of the author, and the book is called Sisterland, and it was written in 2015. And there are other, I have other books by, like this, because this is a dystopia. I have other dystopian novels that I can recommend from the Irish authors. And so we're going to begin. So, essentially, theories associated with second wave feminism consider the existence of like an innate natural difference between men and women. Essentialist feminism, as I'm taking Fiona Tolan, the critic, she explains that she sustains that the biological difference between men and women causes them to be different at a psychological, and I'm quoting, a psychological or even emotional level, and therefore women should fight to be free from the patriarchal system to discover their own female identity. Okay? De Beauvoir's seminal idea that a woman is not born, but rather one becomes a woman, marks a shift in this perspective in a clear reaction against essentialist ideas. She considered that there was no such thing as a feminine nature, and so sexual differences were not biological, but the result of social conditioning. Along those same lines, Judith Butler, I'm moving along a decade. Okay, so along those same lines, Judith Butler introduces the concept that gender is nothing more than a social construction, and human beings perform according to socially determined roles. Butler explains that the body, our bodies, are surfaces where different acts and gestures inscribe gender meaning, making, and I'm quoting, gender attributes not expressive of something of an innate nature, but they are performative. Butler's idea of the performative condition of gender rejects any type of ontological essence and in favor of a more corporeal signification. This is Bristow. This means that the way that humans present in society is not determined by biology or psychology, but it depends exclusively on performativity, like a series of repetitive acts. In de Beauvoir's words, civilization as a whole produced this creature. Okay? Right. So I'm going to introduce another category here. Butler says that when gender is understood finally as a social construction, radically independent of sex, it becomes like a free-floating artifice. And she introduces the example of the cultural practice of drag. I'm sure you know what drag is, right? Right. Okay, so she dubs it as intentionally performative. Drag is a constructed production, like a conscious, exaggerated, and hyperbolic imitation of what is culturally understood as gender. This subversive dissonance, the clash between the culturally constructed gender markers, lays bare not only that gender is not tied to biological sex, but it also calls to reflect upon what are the performative expectations that we have for a gender, for each of the genders. Okay, so now going to the book. Devlin's book explores this notion of a land ruled by and for women, where violence has been eradicated and emotions, she calls them emotions, are administered and controlled. Women, when they are trying to feel something, they go to this place and they take the emotions. That is like it's like a gas, or it's like a spray or something. That's the way that they get like their emotions. They are regulated. And while many would expect these changes to be positive, the novel describes a world in which women are controlling, they are oppressive, and they're even violent towards men. The place that men and women have in Sisterland, in this regime, it depends exclusively on gender. Women are completely in charge of politics, law enforcement, and intellectual activities, while men live as second-class citizens. They have menial jobs, they are denied an education, and they are they are illiterate. And they refuse most aspects of social life, like the right to assembly, to form a family. Does it sound familiar to you? Good. Okay, so Constance is the main character. Okay, she's quite oblivious, like all women, she's quite oblivious to men and the place that they hold in society, in this matriarchal society, until she's selected to become a source. This is a mother. Sources are mothers. This is the thing. The women in Sisterland have not had good results with artificial insemination, and so they have to go back to the old ways to have a child. And so Most women consider this like burdensome and gross. They're disgusted by the idea of it. And so it is in this circumstance that she meets Harper, which is like the male character. Okay, and this what I'm going to read now. I'm going to read a quote, and this is the first time that she sees him. The posture suggested tension. When her eyes grew accustomed to the gloom, she realized the meat, that's Harper, they're called meat. The meat had his hand crossed in front of his chest and his back pressed into the corner where two walls intersected, boxed in. He was wearing a blindfold. No wonder his position was so defensive. So, in Sisterland, healthy men like Harper are taken from the all-male communities where they lived under the supervision of female superiors, and they are forced to become meats, to become inseminators. They are blindfolded and drugged, and they are expected to have sex with a different woman every night. Does this sound familiar? The power that women wield in Sisterland is such that they grow scared to be alone with a woman. So right from the start, it is clear who wields the power. She enters the room in semi-darkness where he has been left to wait for her to do as she pleases. His body reveals the strain and the stress of waiting blindfolded and half naked in the dark. He is in a state of utter vulnerability. So in Devlin's novel, the genders have been essentialized, but it is women who become dominant, leaving men submissive. Hi. No, it's okay. So, men in Sisterland are forced to wear hoods along with a garment that covers most of their face and their body. Men are taught from a very early age to be invisible, and they go unnoticed. And Constance reflects on this while passing a man on the way to work. This is something that she sees when she kind of like becomes aware that there is a man, because they are made to, you know. So she watched him working while he studiously avoided looking at her. He was more blur than flesh, taught to be inconspicuous. His smoke gray, hooded, one-piece garment, does this sound familiar? One-piece garment left only a few inches of face visible. The stiff collar reached up to the base of his nose, and the hood ended at his eyebrows. So, the description of the garment worn by men reminds the reader of similar elements of oppression that exist in society today, making Sisterland very different and yet very familiar. It is impossible not to reflect on the fact that in Devlin's novel, men are perceived to be performing a female role, where women are perceived to be performing a male role, laying bare the hierarchy of gender power within the sisterhood. So what I've presented so far, we can see that there are certain meaning-laden cultural acts or gestures whose systematic repetition ends up constructing gender on the sex body. What we said at the beginning. It's not an expression, it's performative. So I have decided to take into account the ecological dimension in Devlin's text in order to explore the different attitudes that the male and the female characters have in the novel towards the non-human as an example of these performative expectations, okay? Because what? Essentialism considers that all women have an essential superiority and a privileged relationship to nature or truth. We are supposed to be like the guardians of nature. We are expected to be the guardians of nature. And this is echoed in eco-feminist theories that present men as the oppressor that subdues both women and nature. There's an American philosopher that's called Karen Warren. I don't know if you know her. She says that, the anthropocentric dualism, humanity or man and nature, and the androcentric dualism, man and woman, share a common logic of domination that is imposed by a patriarchal system. So there is an underlying model of mastery where one is exploited for the gain, in the case of nature, and for pleasure, in the case of women, of the other. So under the oppression by the hands of men, at the hands of men, women are expected to bond with nature and to share like a common cause. This last extract that I'm going to read introduces another aspect that is useful, that's the natural world. So like I said previously, women are expected to bond with nature and to share this common cause with the non-human. Nevertheless, the reversal of roles in Sisterland causes men to have feminine characteristics and women to act masculine towards nature. What I'm going to read is a dialogue between the male character and the female character, between Harper and Constance. He says, remember that he lives in this all-male communities? Well, he said, I feel complete in my forest, he said. I don't need to go to Mo Express to get his emotions done chemically. I don't need to go to Mo Express to feel glad when I see the sunrise or sympathy for an injured animal. Women came to have their feelings when all they need to do is walk about in the countryside and most will rise up inside them. How can anyone, he's like, how can anyone crunch over autumn leaves and not feel happy? And she goes and says, well, we trip leaves here so that they don't fall off the trees. So it's tidier. So you see that she's completely, okay, so when Harper talks about nature, it's not a threat, but he thinks of it as home. It is clear that he feels a connection with nature that makes him happy and whole. He grew up surrounded by nature, he understands it, and he feels mortified to see how nature is suppressed and regulated in the city. Women in Sisterland, on the other hand, fear nature. They feel nature has to be controlled, cleaned, administered. Grass has been altered not to grow over 1 inch. And most birds and insects are extinct. Trees never grow very tall, and some aspects of the weather, like the wind and the moisture in the air, have been also regulated. So, I wanted to talk about one last thing. All women in Sisterland wear skins. They are these masks that are flexible and covers their face from a hairline into neck. And it protects them, supposedly, from contamination and from aging, so they hardly have any wrinkles. And Constance suspects it regulates their emotions. The skin they wear is actually a shield. It's an actual physical barrier that prevents them from entering into direct contact with nature. Having feelings spontaneously and aging naturally is considered under-evolved and therefore reserved for men only. Women have grown significantly detached from nature to the extent that they feel the natural world is something that they need protection from. Okay, so I'm rounding up here, and I hope you liked it. I really liked reading this book. So in Devlin's book, we said that the gender roles are presented as essentialized, and she uses an extreme binary to show the relationship between gender and power. And the twist is how we perceive them has been reversed. The dissonance of how men and women act in About Sisterland, this reversal of roles acquires such level of absurdity that it pushes the reader or us to evaluate assumptions and expectations on the way we should and shouldn't act. I'm going to close with Butler, and she points out that gender performance is so ingrained within our social selves that we become oblivious to it. And it's not until we come across a book like Martina Devlin's and this overt reversal of gender roles that this gender performativity becomes that we had not noticed before, that we kind of finally become aware of it. So thank you very much. Sure, no worries. Oh, okay. Do you want? Okay, right. So if you have any questions or comments, they're more than welcome. Do you like the book? Yes.
No, I was just thinking. I found this in version very intriguing. Men and women. Of course, it seems like there is a reference to Atwood's Handmaid's Tale, but in reverse. But then I was thinking about this over-controlling aspect that women have in relation to nature, which is not really...
it sounds unnatural when you think of it.
Yes. So why do you think there is this kind of double representation of women, which is positive. Of course, there is this reversal of gender roles, but then at the same time, this over-controlling aspect is not so.
I think that
I have more or less the same question.
okay, yeah, let's talk about it.
What I found is that there are, the author has not built any approach. There is just a reversal of roles.
Yes.
So from this point of view, I find the novel missing something.
It can be.
Something new. Because it's just a reversal of roles, but the control of nature continues.
Yes.
Right now, we are looking for something new concerning the relationship between, let's say, the human species and nature.
Yeah.
In this era of the Anthropocene,
Yes.
we are looking for something new. And I really, sorry to tell you that.
It's okay. No, it's okay. I thought about it. She stops.
Find
Yeah.
new connections, because even in come on, in Madame, in the
Yes.
trilogy,
Yes.
there is at the end, there is a new relationship because
with the new
species that were created in a laboratory.
By Glenn.
Yes, by then it can
Made,
sexual intercourse with the
and they
humans.
create new, yes.
So there is a new species, and eventually this new species can communicate with animals.
She's very positive,
So
yes.
we see that there is a change in the relationship.
I do agree.
Human versus nature.
I do agree that
But
she
not in
stops
this
at
case.
I do agree that she stops at denouncing. She kind of she gets to denouncing. She says, okay, we're going to, because I think that she says, okay, we're going to reverse this, and you're going to see that when this overt reversal, you say like, oh, how can they be so cruel? But men are already cruel. So that's kind of like rubs you like the wrong way. You say, why would they react like that? But I think that she stops at denouncing. I remember that, Sherry Goldfelty, she's she writes, she's like the writer of eco-criticism, and she says that with studies such as gender studies or eco-criticism, we're not only like stopping to see what is going on, but we're also trying to change. And I do agree with what you're saying. I think that she's just denouncing. She's not saying, okay, how can we move forward?
You already have a nice relationship with nature. Not really. According to my experience, many men in my family, men have a better relationship with nature. With animals, etc. Not my daughter. It was not my strong point, I must tell you. But I don't know, it is sort of stereotype.
Yes. She does. She essentializes it, and I think she essentializes it, and I think that she does it kind of like on purpose. You had a question?
Yes. Actually, a comment, which I think would be interesting in the discussion, is that, I agree that the reversing the roles of men and women in the novel could be seen as essentially just changing the parts and what the first supposed to do. But I think that one interesting thing to address in a novel like this is when you read Brave New World, 1984, The Handmaid's Tale, dystopias in general, your reaction as reader is shock. It's like, this is horrible. As you were presenting, I don't know if because we're pretty much all women here, our response is different, although it is a dystopia.
Yeah.
So I think, I agree that, it's complex in the way, of course, it's controlling the body, it's controlling societies, it's a totalitarian regime.
Yeah.
But the inversion of roles, I think, by provoking this different response is interesting in that sense to see, it is a dystopian novel, but can it be a little bit more than that? Yeah. Because of the response that we as a public have.
I
to
only,
the society to portray. Of course, we'll have to read the book.
yes, of course, and other
Curious
books.
to see our response to it, you know?
Yeah.
It's not something that just, it's not a reaction that you see when you're discussing this focus.
Yeah.
You wanted to say something? Yes. I have many comments, but I have
Then we can go grab a beer.
okay, I have one question.
Yes.
Specifically, because I was just curious because you're talking about the sources and the matter of
The whole language.
yes, the matter of appropriation specifically. Is there any moment that, because okay, so you mentioned that in the novel, most women do not have the desire to have
No,
sexual relationships with men.
They
or
actually
it's something
live-
they have.
they actually live together with other women. They are paired with women.
Okay, so yeah, that's my question. Do they present a desire for women?
In some ways, they present it not. It's kind of it's oblique and it's like euphemized because they are like they were roommates, like things like that. I mean, like and they were roommates, kind of like that. But the
Kinda
thing
like
is
that.
that
Okay, got it.
yes, they are paired with women that they get along with, and they live in this because the book can be accessed, you know, through many things. And one of them is the political aspect. It's kind of like a communism, kind of like things like that. They do not have a kitchen at home. They have to go to this place where they all eat. And they live with one woman, and that woman they are together for their whole lives. And they children are not raised by the women; they are raised in another. So it can be accessed like through many like roads. You can like take. I just took the nature
Yes,
thing,
there are different aspects to being
like with
organized.
Madame and the novels that you guys have mentioned as well. So I think
Yes, and I think that Adam is opposed to dystopian, not dystopian, but post.
she defines it. Edwards defines them as dystopians. She says that they are dystopians because they are she says that they are a mixture of a utopia and a dystopia because there is a latent version of the other. For example, in every utopia there is a dystopia because not everyone is happy, and in a dystopia there's a utopia hidden. So she redefines them as that. And when I told you this thing that some of these things like sound familiar, it's Devlin says that this is a book that's she doesn't call it science fiction. She says that it's speculative fiction. She says that it's speculative, which is basically to take aspects that already are in what Atwood does. She coined the term. She coined the term. Yes.
I only use things that exist.
Yes.
Or historically performed in.
Exactly.
She even mentions Argentina
Yes.
and all of it.
There are other books that do this reversal. There's a book by this author. I'm not sure if she's Canadian. I'm not sure. She's it's called The Power by Naomi Alderman, and I really recommend it. You haven't read it? It's nice. So
I want to say something.
you are allowed to speak here.
Yeah.
This is not Sisterland. This is not Sisterland. You can speak.
Better than 1 minute.
I think you don't know which gender is. You presume I'm a...
Very good. Okay.
You assume.
I assumed your gender. That's
You
completely
assume.
wrong. Yes, I know.
My English is not so. No, I think that maybe maybe it's useless to think what that book is not. And with all my respect to her comment, I think it's quite simple. The resource, the reversal of the genders, I think it's simple as literature. But maybe that's what we have to think, not only in gender perspective, but also in literary perspective. And we don't have to ask if it's too simple or not to analyze a book, because we are coming to that book, going to that book from different perspectives.
Okay, Moni, when you choose a book, for a doctorate thesis, or you have to try to choose a book very rich with the movies.
Yes.
Not black and white one.
I would do that. but I think that it's not a major fault. You can take it. I like to read study what I call bad books, bad literature. Bad literature is a good source.
I'm going to send it.
Ready? Good. All right. Now we're going to go with Esther's presentation. Thank you very much for your questions. They're very enriching. Okay.
Please, thank you. Okay. Hi, hello. So again, as Maria introduced me earlier, my name is Esther. I am on my first year of my PhD at the University of São Paulo, and this presentation is a response, I guess. So my thesis is on queer diaspora, and I wrote an article to kind of get things started a while ago, talking about how history appears in both the terms of queerness and diaspora in the novels that I analyze. And the main point of talking about queer diaspora is talking about in-betweenness. So this middle space in which my characters appear. And one of the teachers that analyzed my article kindly pointed out that I'd never defined what in-betweenness means. So this presentation is a response to that. This is basically what is in-betweenness in terms of queer diaspora and how that appears in my novels. So, in terms of presentation, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to explain what is queer diaspora, or at least barely the definition that I use, because there are multiple ones. I'll be showing you my object of study, and then I'll talk about what this otherness and these spaces means, both in terms of diaspora and queerness. And then final thoughts, same as usual. I use a definition of queer diaspora presented by Anne-Marie Fortier in her article published in 2002. It defines queer diaspora as the condition of exile and estrangement experienced by queer subjects, which locates them outside the confines of home, that being the heterosexual family, the nation, and the homeland. Which is basically to say that all queer subjects are automatically outsiders. They are constantly otherness, and they have the constant feeling of unbelonging, no matter where they live or where they exist, because there is no society, country, or place in the world in which it's 100% okay and safe to be not cis and heterosexual. And queer diaspora that strongly correlates to just diaspora in general, because the moment you leave your country, you automatically exile from your original culture, and as well a foreigner and a stranger in whatever that it is that you go. So both being queer and being an immigrant presents this strange parallel of being in between things, of existing in an area that's never here or there, and there's no safe place to exist. To study this subject, I used both novels by Adiba Jagda. Adiba Jagda is a queer Bengali Irish Muslim author. She was born in Bangladesh, and she immigrates to Devlin as a child, and she lives there until this very day. She's Muslim, she wears a hijab, and she identifies as queer. Her debut novel, The Henna Wars, was published in 2020. It talks about the Bengali and the Brazilian diaspora in Dublin, and it touches themes of lesbophobia, biphobia, xenophobia, cultural appropriation, and racism. The follow-up novel, Honey and Issues Guide to Fake Dating, was published in 2021. It talks about the Bengali diaspora, and more specifically, biphobia, intercommunity struggles, racism, and Islamophobia, once again in Dublin. In The Henna Wars, the main character, Nishat, participates in a competition, and she tries to build a henna business in Dublin. And in the process, she ends up falling in love with her rival, who is a Brazilian immigrant called Flavia. She is outed as a lesbian to her colleagues and to her family. She suffers extreme, both physical and verbal attacks by them. And she was a very unpleasant point of coming out of the closet and being outed against her will. And in Honey and Issue's Guide to Fake Dating, you have the two main characters. It's a double point of view book, which is Honey and Issue. Honey she comes out as bisexual to her friends, to her white Irish friends, and they immediately deny her sexuality and says that she cannot be bisexual because she is Bengali and she's a Muslim. So obviously that's not a thing. So she asks Issue, who is also an immigrant from Bangladesh, and they're not friends, they do not get along, but she asks her to pretend to be her girlfriend. That's kind of how the story starts. One of the things that called my attention to Jacques Derrida's novels is that they're not coming out stories of crisis of identity, which is to say the characters both start and end the book being very certain on their sexual identities, and they don't have any crisis, they don't feel guilty, they don't feel bad, they don't wish they were heterosexual, which I already think is great when it comes to queer stories. And also how these characters deal with themes of being out and being othered differently, which I will talk a little bit later on. But those are the novels that I'm working with. When it comes to terms of otherness and in-betweenness, I use a lot of Homi Bhabha's work for obvious reasons, but most specifically when he talks about the need to focus on moments and processes that are produced in their articulation of cultural differences. And I mean that not only in the moments in which the characters have to interact with their Irish colleagues and friends, and Irish society, which is so extremely white, so extremely Catholic, but also when they have to interact in between themselves. Nishat and Flavia are from completely different parts of the world, one being Brazilian, the other one being from Bangladesh. And Honey and Issue, despite they coming from the same country, Bangladesh has multiple different languages. They come from different, they have different dialects. Honey is extremely Muslim. Her religion is very important for her identity, while Issue is agnostic. So there's multiple cultural differences, not only in between them and the Irish, but in between each other, and they all deal with that very differently. And more importantly, how these in-between spaces provide the terrain for elaborating strategies of selfhood that initiate new signs of identity. So it's not only about how they use this in-betweenness to establish themselves as who they are, in terms of being queer, being migrant, and how they don't belong, but also do belong in all these places, but how they start creating a community and a bonding with each other through these experiences. And I just extremely zoomed in, but it's okay. A couple other authors that I also quote a lot because I found them very important is Megoni's article from 2015, in which she focused on the fact that expectations, particularly in regard to sexuality, migration can also bring greater isolation and ongoing negotiations for identity. So once again, because there's this otherness and this in-betweenness, this middle space, it's an ongoing thing. There's no moment in which you can just relax and say, okay, this is who I am and this is how I am perceived, because that's in constant change. And I also use Said a lot, and I find this section in which he talks very interesting, what he talks about. One must join the primordial or constituted group, and the subaltern other must accept their inferior status, or they must fight to the death. So when it comes to the characters and their relation to being othered by others, I think it's very interesting. Nishat and Issue don't try to fit in within their Irish colleagues. They're very headstrong. They create a lot of conflict when they are very prompt to answer and talk back when they suffer attacks of racism, Muslim, or anything like that. But when they come home and their parents reject them because of their sexuality, they get extremely quiet, and it's extremely painful for them being rejected by their own families and by their home cultures, and not being able to connect to that. While Honey and Flavia do the exact opposite. They're fine with their families, but they try to change a lot to be accepted by their Irish colleagues. Honey, a huge part of Honey's arc in the story is her problems with her religion, not her faith, but her having to change who she is and almost ignoring her own religious obligations because of her friends, because they judge her for being Muslim. So this is something that's very interesting and is very present in the novels and in stories like this in general. I brought a few things to show. So this is when Honey and Ishu are talking right at the beginning of the novel, and Honey says, "Considering my friend's reaction to me being bisexual, I think most people at this party would be the types to pigeonhole identities." And Ishu replies, "Like they have been our entire lives. To most white people, just having brown skin is going to mean we're one and the same." So they had, again, different idioms, different religions, different life experiences, but to all Irish people, they're like, "Oh, you two must be friends. You have the exact same thing because you have the same skin tone." They're the only Bangladeshi people in their school, so that's one of the things. This is in the Henna Wars. Nishat goes to a party with China, who is a white friend. And she says, "China fit into the party like the final piece in a puzzle. I fit into the party like someone really bad at puzzles had tried to super glue a piece in out of frustration." And then China introduces everyone like, "This is Nishat, she's from Bangladesh." And everyone looks at her. And Nishat's like, "As if my brown skin didn't set me apart like a question mark in a sea of food stops." This is later on in Honey and Ishu, which they are in the party of pigeonhole identities. They try to peer pressure Honey into playing a drinking game, and Honey replies, "I'm Muslim, I don't drink." And her friend says, "Yeah, but you're not that kind of Muslim. You don't even wear to indicate her hijab." And the conversation progresses, and they start fight, and her friend says, "Everyone knows that you're going to be with a guy at the end of the day, and this whole bisexuality thing is your way of seeming interesting or whatever. Like, you're so Muslim, you won't even drink a drop of alcohol, and you want us to think you're for real gay?" So you can't be one thing or the other. Yeah, it's just not a thing to be two things at once, apparently, because religion and sexuality are so correlated. To kind of wrap up this point into one neat bow, Gilroy points out that queerness automatically denies the subject of the socially expected heterosexual mapped future, while Diaspora opens up a historical and experimental rift between the locations of residence and the locations of belonging. So I think when we talk about queer diaspora, I think this is a very common theme of studying queer people who move away from home so they can be themselves, they can come out of the closet. But I think it's much more interesting to study how both of these things are just correlated. They are very similar experiences, with one being a physical distance and another one being a more sociological distance, I believe. It's just a matter of what it means to belong when you know there's no place in society for you. You always belong, or you never belong, and that's just something that you have to come to terms with. And these are more excerpts that I think show that very well. This is when Nishat is talking to her cousin a little late after coming out. Her cousin says, "You have a problem, Nishat. You don't realize it. You're young, you're confused." And Nishat says, "I'm not confused. If I was, I would have never put myself to this Corinthian judgment, this silence." And she says, girls like you aren't, you're Muslim, Muslims aren't gay. So different book, same problem. And this is in Honey Nish's Guide to Fake Dating. It's right after they come out as a couple. Ishu's walking down the hallway and she can see people talking about her. And she says, despite the fact that we got marriage equality a few years ago, there's something uncomfortable being queer here. The same way there's something uncomfortable about being Muslim here. I think Ireland has got quite a reputation lately for being a very progressive country to be queer, because they got marriage equality pretty early on, considering a lot of things, and adoption rights and all of that. But it's still a country, so there's still a lot of homophobia in there, and it's still a very white country. So the whole being Muslim and being queer are both things that kind of, they're quite uncomfortable to be. And in the Henna Wars, once again, is just right at the end, in which Nishat is reflecting about going back to Bangladesh because things are so bad in Dublin for her right now. And she thinks, it's just that I'm not sure if I'd want to go back to Bangladesh permanently or even semi-permanently. Aside from the fact that being gay there is punishable by death, I'm also not sure where I would even fit in. I don't fit in here, but would I fit in there any better? I don't think so. I've already lost most of my Bengali, and when I sometimes talk to my cousins from there, it seems like the differences between us are Akash Patal, like the sky and earth. So the situation is not great in Ireland. The situation is definitely not good in Bangladesh. Not really good anywhere, but you know. So yeah. For final thoughts, though the characters feel very connected to their original cultures and they are very confident in their queer identities, they are only able to establish a sense of community in which they feel truly comfortable to be themselves when around other characters who are also placed in queer diaspora. So sure, they have good relationships with their sisters or maybe the parents, depending on the novel we're talking about. They may even have one or other Irish friend who still supports them despite everything else, and they're not racist or anything. But in both novels, the only moment in which the characters are able to relax fully, to exist without judgment, is when they are alone with another character who also understands what it is to not belong. And it's not a matter of walking into a room and feeling like this is a place that you're not supposed to be in. It's just a matter of your very own existence. It's unbelonging. So thank you very much for your attention. This is my email if you have any questions, and those are my references.
Okay, so if you have any questions or comments, now is the time. I have a question. Well, not a question, but a comment. Well, actually a question. Are they rite of passage books? I mean, how old are they? They are in high school.
They are in high school, yes. They are all seniors in high school.
Okay, so it's kind of like a rite of passage.
It's a little bit of a coming of age, yeah.
Coming of age, yes. Okay.
I have the impression this has nothing to do with your presentation, but I think that right now, in the last years after the war, the pandemic, etc., ethnical differences are becoming more important in the Western world than gender differences. As to gender, I feel that, and especially in Ireland, I think that the ethnical differences are becoming more and more important. There's a reaction, maybe because of the situation in the world today, and not in Ireland, but in the world in general. In the West, come on. I've never been to Asia. I'm talking to you about Europe or the Western world, but Europe, let's say. What do you think? Because you felt both,
yes,
all right? But I don't know why I feel that ethnic differences, there's a reaction, a stronger reaction against ethnic differences that than gender differences?
I'd say I think the differences have always been important. I think they're being more talked about recently, which I think is often there's been a pushback against stories that are all characters are now stories about being white. Yeah, I think people are tired of reading stories in which they don't feel represented. People are tired of reading stories in which the realities are not being represented. I mean, honestly, I've been to Ireland, and I mean, well, maybe I'm biased because I'm Brazilian. I think I have maybe 3 friends who are like white, because it's a very multicultural country, but it's definitely a problem there. And I think this is just a response. I think there's people are writing more. I mean, people have always been writing a lot of stories in which characters are not white, but I think people are publishing more and people are recommending more. I wouldn't say it's taking place or it's being more talked about than gender. I think gender is still pretty much a huge thing.
It's very strong.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the reasons why I picked these novels and I started my thesis was because I've been working with gender for a while now, and the area of gender studies is so wide. And so I thought,
No intersections.
no intersections. And
Like you.
My name is Mrs.
I'm a
My name is Mrs. I am a Cuban, but I am an immigrant in Ireland for 40 years. And I am also.
So you can.
And I also.
You are an authority.
So I think when you were talking this, the difference between ethnic is something that people are talking more than gender. I don't know if that's it, because it all gets complicated.
I imagine so. And maybe my question.
Immigrants from different ethnic, but also immigrants can be complicated with gender. And
Yes.
today, the concept of gender is completely changed from 20 or 40 years ago. Today, you cannot say in Europe, I'm not sure here, you cannot say to a young person, she or he, because they can be offended. And they are not gay or lesbian. They think they are they have to. And very recently, we have a teacher in one of the Irish schools that was
non-binary.
fired because he didn't want to call his student for they.
Gender neutral pronoun.
And that is very complex. I am not understand completely the whole dynamic of gender. It's going completely crazy, but we need to understand that because the new generation is changing. And they have different ideas and concepts about what is gender.
oh, then maybe as a non-binary person, then maybe I can help.
If I can make a comment, I think that Maria brought a term that I think defines what is there's research quite and precisely, that is the idea of intersection. Because I think the complexity of looking at these novels or these kind of writings in that way is that because it's hybridism, but it's a double hybridism and a double otherness.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, this is the moment to research this. And it's very interesting that you're doing this. That's why I think your contribution as a Brazilian scholar researcher will bring, because you are from a multicultural society, multi-religious society, that until a couple of years ago we thought we were doing fine. I mean, with everybody living in harmony and happiness until things are not working that way anymore. And I think that this perspective being put in the Irish context, as someone from the outside precisely acknowledging this doubleness of liberalism and otherness is very precious, and I'm looking forward to see when your thesis is done to see how you do it. I mean, and intersectionality, it's one of the key concepts.
Like without, like, we weren't like expecting this, but the novel that I dealt with was like the end of the continuum, and what she's dealing with, what's going on right now, like the middle. I was dealing with a dichotomy that is unreal, and it was like a parody because it's no longer like that. We just made a joke, but it's actually quite a real thing. Like assuming another person's gender is like it's not going to be acceptable any longer in the next few years, and that's completely fine. We are just dealing with a spectrum here, I think. And
I think you mentioned in your presentation very well that in multiple people have said it is already gender is a construct. It's social integrator.
And we're doing it all the time. That's why I asked you if they were like coming of age, because it's kind of like you kind of like build your identity throughout your life, but it's like precisely in those years that you kind of like start,
questioning.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's one last concept that I want to refer to. It's liminality. Yeah. Because we are talking about like liminality, and whenever there is this in-betweenness that you're mentioning, there's always negotiations. And we're also like talking about the expectations. Yes.
No, I'm finished. I just wanted to.
That was just babbling. Don't worry.
Finish the conversation. And to echo what you're saying, that it's wonderful to hear this work coming from Brazilian scholars about Irish literature, new literature, from people who have come to Ireland relatively recently, and only historically, I think, And I'm Irish, obviously, by accident, and I'm 63. So I have, the backdrop to my life has always been religion and gender kind of more particular. And being involved in provoking change has been the story of my life. And also as a lesbian Mercedes partner for 30 years in Ireland. And we've seen a lot, put it that way. But I suppose one thing that I would say about the way that you're analysing it is, historically, there is a much longer history of gender in the country than there is of, say, racial difference. Religion, yes, that's all, healing as well in terms of other religions coming to the country. We've had a few religions, the dominant one being Catholic. But I think a longer perspective on it is worth, I think it can generate more interesting viewpoints for you in the study of the literature that you're doing. But it's really it provokes all kinds of new questions in Ireland, this kind of literature. It's wonderful because it will provoke more change, and that's the great thing about it. And just to say, congratulations, it's wonderful.
Yes,
the work that
really.
you're doing.
And just one final comment, because they're expecting us
Yes.
downstairs.
The film.
I just want to say that this is such a necessary panel. It's so emotional, and I think that you can create your own concept of in-betweenness. And I was thinking about the style, because at the same time they're dealing with, like really dense issues. It's funny. It's like the way there is a kind of humor in the way they are approaching issues that are very dense. So
They're not being
this is
dramatic.
the contemporary aspect of it, how young people are dealing with it, like rites of passage and middle school, high school, and
So I think this is also something that you can maybe take in your thesis as well. So
Because I think we tend to see these matters that are very dense and very complex and think, oh, this is a very complex thing. And for them, it's like, this is how I exist. So that's why it's humor and it's like, because it's their daily thing. They don't see,
of course,
why complicate it in the language when it's already existing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
So, did I answer the question?
I may say something.
Yeah.